or call office was formed.
They were successful, and the police acted as a go-between and helped them to form the new company. But Tommy Ando was not allowed to have any responsibility. She was the one who had to apologize for causing the trouble. So she wasn't allowed to have a position of power in a new company.
Despite Tommy Ando not being able to take a role, her work in leading the strike secured a better future for geisha in Osaka.
Geisha hadn't been thought of in society in general as workers. So it was interesting that they stood up for that. That was very significant in Japan.
And it had wider implications too, encouraging geisha around Japan to stand up for their rights and inspiring action.
After the strike in Osaka, in May in Asahikawa, 100 geisha followed suit and went on strike. In July, in Chiba, another 80 climbed a mountain and hid away as the other geisha had done. So you could say the strike seemed to influence other areas of Japan.
Dr. Yuhei Yambe was speaking to me, Laura Jones, for Witness History.
This is the BBC World Service, where Celia Hatton tells the story of China's leader.
It's got the world's biggest population, but over the last decade, political power has settled around one man, Xi Jinping.
He controls everything.
How did Xi Jinping do it? How did he pull off one of the greatest power heists we've seen in modern history?
Who is Xi Jinping? Saturday at 11 GMT. In 30 minutes, Health Check.
When you're trying to work out what's healthy to eat and what to avoid, it can be confusing. It can feel as though 1 week a study
And you are live.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Lavallo. I chair the Belmont Middle and High School Building Committee. Today is Thursday, October 13th, at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're coming to you live. Thanks to Belmont Media. Jeff, thank you for helping out behind the scenes there. I'm going to just go through some procedures. This is a remote Zoom meeting, so all of us are remote in this meeting. We'll establish a quorum by roll call. Our attendance. I'll ask all folks to keep their mics muted during the meeting while others are talking. Should you want to talk, please then unmute so that we don't have background noise disturbing the conversations. When we vote for committee, I'll ask all committee members to turn their mics on at once so we can move through the roll call voting. In conversations, folks, please state your name first so that others that are listening can understand who's talking. Material that will be presented today was distributed to committee members on Tuesday, and the material will be available following this meeting on the Belmont Middle and High School Building Committee website. There'll be a time for public comments. When that time does come up, you'll be invited to speak. If you have something to say, please raise your hand on a smartphone or computer. And if you have a dial-up phone, press #9 and the co-host will call on you. And if at any time our audio is interrupted, we will suspend the meeting until such time as the audio is corrected. Okay, so I'm going to go through roll call voting. Roll call now to establish attendance. Please turn your mics on, committee members. Emma Thurston.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Therese Garvin. Patrice? Okay, John Phelan.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, John. Pat Bruce.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Pat. Diane Miller.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Diane. Dave Blazon.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. Tom Caputo.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Tom. Joel Mooney.
Good morning, Bill here.
Good morning, Joel. Kate Bowen. Kate. Jamie Shea, good morning. Jamie, I see you're up. There you go. Good morning.
Yeah, sorry. No, a Pledge of Allegiance was running, so I couldn't hear. I got it. I'm here.
Bob McLaughlin, good morning.
Hey, Bill. Good morning to you.
Chris Messer said he wouldn't be able to join us today, as did Joe DiStefano. Mike McAllister, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Okay, and I'm here, Bill Lavallo. And then one more time, checking on Kate Bowen, who I expect, and Patrice Garvin, I'm expecting. Okay, I'm going to just go through some other consultants and town participants. Jennifer Hewitt, our Belmont Finance Director, are you here with us this morning? Okay, Steve Mazzola, our School Director of Technology, you here this morning, Steve? Okay. Lisa Gibilario. Lisa,
Yes,
you here? Good morning.
I'm here. Thanks.
Tom Gasunas from CHA. Good morning.
Good morning.
Don White from CHA. Good morning.
Morning, Bill.
Don. Is Sandra here from CHA? Okay.
I believe she is.
Didn't hear.
She's the 7510.
Okay. Okay. I'll check her in. Justin Ferdenze from CHA. Okay.
He's here.
Tony, okay.
Good morning, Bill.
There you go, Justin. Tony Del Greco from CHA.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning, Tony. I forgot to
I'm here
mention.
also, Bill.
Okay,
Sorry.
there you go, Sandra. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention Carla Koza from the school department. Good morning, Carla. See you there.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to add, I just didn't have you on my list though. Just being honest, now I have you on the list. From Perkins and Will, Brooke Trivis. Okay, from Perkins and Will, Vital Albuquerque. Okay, from Perkins and Will, Brian Spangler.
Here.
There you
Good
go.
morning, everyone.
We have someone. And is Christine Mulligan with us from Perkins and Will?
I don't think so.
You're by yourself, Brian. Doug Faria from Advanced Technology Design. Are you here, Doug?
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Doug. From Skanska, Dan Lanaville? No. Jim Kraft from Skanska? Okay. Paige Matthews from Skanska? Okay. One more try. Mike Morrison from Skanska? Okay. CHA.
You have Paige, but she's muted. I couldn't hear her.
Oh, Paige, you are here? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe you hear her yelling in the trailer. Okay. Good. I was going to say, go find someone. Just back at committee members.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Oh, there you go, Paige. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what was going on.
Okay. It's that dark hole of a conference room you have. So Kate Bowen, I see you here, right? Good morning, Kate.
Present.
Okay, and Patrice Garvin, are you here? Okay. We have a quorum. Thank you, folks.
Can I ask folks to mute your mics if you're not speaking? It's causing a little bit of interference. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to share the agenda. Bob McLaughlin said, Bill, is this going to be a quick meeting? And I did not answer him. I just don't seem to do well here. This is a business meeting that doesn't have any more material to it. So hopefully, can you folks see the agenda? Can you folks see the agenda? Oh, you're all muted. I'm assuming
Yes.
we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, yes.
So our next building meeting. So our next building meeting is November 10th, scheduled to be Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and it is a regular business meeting. Today we'll review and approve previous minutes from our meeting in September. We'll get an update on the photovoltaic system procurement. We will hear from our OPM designer construction manager what activities they've had this month. We'll get an update on project cost events. That's where we dig into the project financials. We'll spend some time there. We'll just have a discussion of some pending changes that are coming up. Review a few pending change orders that have been submitted but not evaluated or approved yet. We will have presentation on a prime contract change order with change orders that have been approved for building committee approval, I should say. They have been recommended for building committee approval. Then we have a technology procurement discussion that'll go on for phase 2. Then we'll pay our bills. I'll get right back to that. We'll have a construction update from Skanska. We'll have a schedule update from Skanska, and then we'll hear comments from residents and any new business. Michael McAllister advised me that he needs to get off a bit early today, so we're going to move the treasurer's report, the approval of invoices, right after an update on project cost events, so pretty early in the meeting. Okay, any comments on our agenda for today? Bob, I think it's short, but we'll see.
Bill, Patrice, and Jennifer have joined the meeting.
Okay, good morning, Patrice. Thank you for joining. And Jennifer, good morning. Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to our first item on the, I do want to say I'm going to go back to the November meeting. I do expect that might go a little longer than normal. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we expect our approval of the PV procurement at that meeting. So we're going to partition some time to get into and discuss that. And we'll hear a little bit more shortly, but our next meeting, which is a business meeting, will have layered in it PV procurement. Okay, next item on the agenda then, and I'll share that, is approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was meeting number 148. And that meeting, I'm not sharing it. That meeting minutes, I did get comments from Kate Bowen. Kate asked that, and a comment that she made when we were discussing well irrigation wells, and that's on page 4. Let me go there. Be added. So right here under section 7, when we were talking about add service proposal for irrigation design and so forth, we decided that we would not need this because the irrigation source for our fields will be MWRA water. However, Kate made a good comment and she asked that this be added in. You guys probably remember that. She requested that the committee consider directing some of the funds that would have otherwise been spent on the well drilling to go towards purchase of a newer technology aeration equipment for the fields, which would maintain good soil and help conserve water. So some of you may know that this is a good time of year to do aeration in the fall, and Kate's been an advocate for proper field maintenance. So thank you, Kate. I'd like to add that to the meeting minutes. Any other comments or recommendations to the meeting minutes? Lisa, I'll ask you to add that right after the vote. Sure. So we'll be down in the bottom section right before section 8.
Sure.
Okay. Hearing no comments, may I have a motion?
Bob McLaughlin, move approval with the addition of Kate's comment.
Pat, second.
Pat, thank you. Okay, committee members, if you could turn your mics on, we'll go through roll call voting. All those in favor, Emma Thurston?
Yes.
Patrice Garvin? Patrice? No. John Phelan?
Yes.
Pat Bruce?
Yes.
Diane Miller?
Yes.
Dave Blazon?
Yes.
Tom Caputo?
Yes.
Joel Mooney?
Yes.
Kate Bowen?
Bowen, aye.
Jamie Shea?
Yes, and Bill, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I do have to leave at 8:50. I have class at 8:55.
Yes, you do. Thank you for joining us, though. Bob McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mike McAllister?
Yes.
Bill Lovallo, yes. Okay. We'll go to our next item on the agenda, which is an update on our PV, so our solar system procurement. I have to remember sometimes I've been advised that not everybody knows what PV is. So our solar system on the roof. And with that, Don, I think you were going to give that update today.
Sure, Bill. Give an update as to where we stand on the PV bidding process. We are currently out to bid at this time with 6 firms that are pre-qualified through the extensive pre-qualification process. We received 7 qualification statements, vetted them with the committee, had a point system to score everybody, and 6 of the 7 qualified to bid on the project. There was one firm that just really did not have the PV experience in the past. So we are out to bid to 6 firms currently. Everything is being bid through the online site Bid Docs. This is different than the process that was done for all the other subs earlier. I'm told, I was not around at that point, but the bids will be submitted through Bid Docs, tabulated by them, and then a summary presented. So currently, we got the information to Bid Docs last week. We have a pre-bid meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. this morning on site. Hopefully we get a good turnout from the interested firms. We expect to be issuing an addendum later this week. Bill and I have gone through some things that we want to clean up on the bid documents, and whatever else might come out of the pre-bid meeting this morning to address that in an addendum as well. We have bids due on Wednesday, October 26th. We've set up the bid form that we've got a base bid and 2 alternates. And this is done in the event that there's a budgetary problem. We have cutoff points. So the base bid is the 4th floor roof, which is the high school and extends into the building D area. We've got alternate number 1, which is the 3rd floor roof of building D. And we've got alternate number 2, which is the 3rd floor roof of building F. So it will give us some options if there's a budgetary issue to be able to cut things off. The hope is that we are within budget, obviously, and that we present the information to the building committee on November 10th, get approval, and make a recommendation to award at that time and get somebody on board and running. So we've laid out a schedule that is aggressive, but it is looking for them to complete their work by September 1, 2023. The biggest wild card will be the availability of product, which is a volatile market from what we're told, but that is the goal. That is what we've laid out, and we'll take it from there.
Just to clarify for people listening, the bid with the base bid and alternate 1 and 2 included is the system that's 1.3 megawatts that we've been talking about. So committee members, any questions? I'm looking forward to our November meeting to hear the results of the bid. This is a different bid process than most PV systems, because most PV systems go through a process where you're looking at most advantageous and you have a different way to review. But because we're under Chapter 149A project, we have to go with this pre-qual system. As a matter of fact, Don, I'm going to ask you to just explain something in there, but the pre-qual system requires some statutory requirements that be followed, and as well, we must take the lowest bidder that comes in, no evaluation other than the bid, because they've been pre-qualified. That being said, Don, we had earlier presented to the committee and the public a plan where we would be about at this time, maybe even September, making a recommendation for award. So can we have a quick discussion or update of why that schedule is now into November?
The qualification process took longer than anticipated. We had, when the pre-calls first went out in June, there were some changes to the language that extended that period of when we would receive the qualification statements. We were also asked to add about 20 firms to the list to see if they would be interested in responding to a pre-qualification statement. I guess that came from the local solar committee. Unfortunately, none of those firms ever did respond. So once we got into the qualification process, received the 7 qualification statements, we took some time to evaluate. There's, a lot of information gets submitted. And we had a committee that included myself, included Skanska, included Pat as the owner's rep, Ryan as the architect's rep, to go through and evaluate everything. And we had a scoring system established. The problem became nobody was being qualified due to lack of reference response. And that is a requirement of the process, is to get positive references on the firms as part of their qualification process. We had to chase and chase and chase the listed references to get a response from most every single firm. It's just a long process. So, but we needed to do that to get a good representative number of firms to bid on the work. Otherwise we may have ended up with just 2 companies. So at the end of the day, we chased enough references to get the qualified firms up to 6. That's where we are today.
Thank you. And if anyone's out there listening that gets calls on references for any sort of thing, please return those, because you could hear on the other end of that, it's very frustrating when you're given a reference and those references don't respond, holds things up. Any questions from committee members on this? Okay, not hearing any. We'll go to our next item on the agenda.
Sorry, I do have one question. I noticed in the timeline, and I don't know if this relates to the bids that you're getting in, that it looked like the final inspection on the electric is happening after the solar, or sorry, before the solar is scheduled to go in. And I'm just wondering about that timing, and maybe that is connected to how you've received the bids at this stage.
So you're talking about final electrical for the building permit. The PV permit is a different permit. The PV is a different permit, and it's under a different time frame. So that is not the final inspection for that. They're 2 separate things. I hope that answers your question. So the building permit will close, and it has its own schedule, and then we're procuring PV. They'll be pulling their own permit for that package. We already have an interconnection permit application in, which I think is getting an update. I think this week we're going to hear it's approved, and through Belmont Light. So that's one step, and then pulling an electrical permit through our Office of Community Development is a second piece to that. The awarded vendor will do that, and then they will have to close out that electrical permit when they are done with the PV system.
And just to be clear, point of clarification is that the successful bidder will be assigned to and under contract to Skanska like all the other trade contractors on the job. They won't be independent. They will be managed by the Skanska team.
Any other questions?
Bill, I don't know if you want to take questions from residents, but we do have one hand raised.
Yeah, I know, Brian, we're going to get to you at the end of the meeting. So our next item on the agenda then is our update for our professionals. So we have CHA, and we have Perkins and Will, and we have Skanska. CHA, you're up. Don? Justin? Tony, there you go. Okay, Tony, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
All right, so we have basic activities that you guys see every month. A few different things that we were working on this month was some locker room installation in collaboration with the design team in Skanska on when that's going to happen and when the lockers are going to actually hit the site. Don already went over the PV. We started collaborating for winter work, scheduling, and that coordination effort with the school is forthcoming. And some of our new activities on site that you guys typically have seen all of these, except for, I think, the drainage in the playing fields has been ongoing. We started in overseeing intermittent fireproofing, spray applied, and that's actually going to be wrapping up. Some through slab penetrations for fire stop. Elevator installation is started. That's ongoing. And that just about wraps it up. Everything else is basically the same you see every single month.
And one other thing, you folks have moved your trailer, right? There's a whole process that went through last month of relocating.
Yes, that was a pleasure.
And that's just
see us shaking. It's because there's a D8 running right by our trailer.
Okay, so that there's site activity that's impacting the trailer locations and so forth. So we'll hear more about that from Skanska. We'll go to Perkins and Will next.
Yep.
Is this
Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Spangler with Perkins and Will. Many of the items here are kind of status quo. Our focus has shifted after getting the field house and some of those ancillary spaces occupied for the school year. Our focus has shifted mostly now to the middle school and getting that built. And we're on site 2 to 4 days a week, working with Skanska to get that done, working out things that come up in the field, detail clarifications. We spent 3 hours walking with Skanska yesterday morning, in fact, working out a few different conditions. So that's all been going really well from our perspective. And you can see some of the other stats, I guess, for lack of a better term, on things that we've issued, reviewed, and produced throughout the month, which is pretty typical.
Okay. We'll hear from Paige, and then we'll ask for comments or questions from committee members. So Paige, Skanska's activities regarding project management.
You stole my thunder. I was going to talk about our trailer move.
Well, I didn't talk about all of it, so go right ahead and explain.
So the last section of road that we have to complete our roadway work on the project was in the footprint of where our trailer complex was. So it took a lot of coordination. It was kind of painful, to Tony's point, to relocate CHAs to single wide trailers rather than double wide trailers so that they could stay out of the roadway long term and not have to move again. And then we moved into the building. So we're actually in the high density storage room, with a future high density storage room now. And it's a little bit of an adjustment. So different, a lot of moving parts this month. We moved parking off site, which was another big logistics effort. So that's been, it was going well. We had a little bit of an issue yesterday. Definitely something that we're monitoring very closely and spending a good amount of our time on, just to make sure that we try to keep the neighbors happy. And again, this is just for this month. So come November 1st, we will be back on site parking. We will have the roadway complete and we will have the curbing in place. So we will be back to as a little bit of normalcy come November 1st. And then to Brian's point earlier, shifting gears a bit from the Summer Slammer into phase 2. And then in addition to that, trying to get having a lot of different logistics meetings related to the final completion of the project, related to all of the, what we call the splice rooms and the temporary stair, and kind of how that all comes together at the end. That's been a really big focus for us this month. So again, shifting gears for sure. So.
Thank you, Paige. At this time, I do want to give a shout out and thanks to the neighborhood of the neighborhood of Underwood, Trowbridge, and Hittinger Street, Baker Street. They've been very accommodating. This is the temporary location where the contractors are parking in front of their properties on the street, on one side of the street. None on Underwood, but they're obviously impacted just because they're right there. And I reach out to Emma Thurston, who then disseminates the messages to the neighborhood. Emma, you've gotten reasonably positive responses back, I hear, right?
I have gotten no negative responses, and I've had, since this started, 3 neighbors tell me that they're grateful that the parked cars on one side have reduced the speed, particularly on Baker Street, which can be a little bit of a downhill road race there. So and I just want to say thanks to Skanska too for the coordination of that, because I've been in the yard, I've been walking around the neighborhood, and the contractors, have said to me, like literally face to face, like, hey, we're really sorry. Like, we hate parking in front of everybody's house. Make sure you guys let us know if there's a problem. Should we park somewhere else? Like, making sure they're not blocking whatever. So I'm sure if issues come up, you guys are on it quickly. I can vouch. I can see a car in front of my house right now that has a number to call if there's any issues. So I appreciate the way that they've acted and the way that you guys have handled that.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Skanska. So, and this was preceded by some community coordination before it started. So I think that's when you have good planning, you get good results. So thank you. Committee members, do you have any comments on our professionals on their activities this month?
Bill, if I could just make one comment, and that is if any of the committee members or any of the public for that matter is coming to the site, please reach out to anyone from CHA first, just because with the trailer moves and access, it can be a little precarious, and we would want to make sure that you're protected as you come in. The access road off of Trowbridge is no longer available, so you've got to come in from the back of the site, but it is a construction site, or I should say from the front through Golden Street around the back of the building. So please just reach out to us if anybody needs to come to the site for any reason, and we'll make arrangements to, quote unquote, escort you into the proper location safely.
Thank you, Tom. Things have been going well. Okay, we'll hear a bit more about that. So seeing no hands up from committee members, we'll continue on with our next item on the agenda, which is where we get into project cost summary. So let me share that. Take a deep breath here. It's being shared. And Don, is this you?
This is me.
Okay.
So we've updated all of the costs through September 30th. You're looking at the front page summary sheet. It is through Pro Pay number 54, just recently submitted. So we've got the amount paid to date is updated on a monthly basis and total down at the bottom. That is the paid to date is 247,707,251. What we are also working on and hope to have completed before next month's meeting is a pretty good analysis of the soft costs and projections that we want to update. We really didn't make any changes to projections this month, but there are some places that we're going to want to make some updates to that. And we really do have to do a deep dive under the column current projected final cost to be updated monthly. Those items.
Don, that number currently is about 2.28 million, which is unencumbered.
That's the delta. That's the savings.
Yeah.
That is fed from the previous column, which is the current projected final cost. Those are the ones we need to do as much scrubbing as we can to update those numbers and see how that may adjust the delta, which is the 2,287,000 right now.
And we're 9 months away from the end of construction, so we're able to hone in on these things a lot easier as we continue to tick away months.
Correct.
So right now, it looks like we have been received nearly $65 million from the state.
That is through Pro Pay number 52. And below that, I've got the amount submitted for Pro Pay's 53, 54, which not that entire amount gets paid. It's proportional.
So for committee members to understand, our maximum grant total is 80 million. It's been reduced slightly, but the MSBA will stop paying on the grant or suspend payment, not stop, when we reach 95% of that commitment. So that is about 70 million, right? No, I'm sorry, 75 million, somewhere in that range.
Yes, and I think Sydney was projecting that might happen early next year.
January. So I'm just letting committee members know they're not going to stop. They suspend until the final audit, which will run into 2024. So Don, you and Sydney have been meeting with town accountant, town treasurer, and giving that update. Oh, actually on as well with Jennifer Hewitt and giving those that cash flow projections so that there's an understanding of how all this works as we continue to have to run our business of approving invoices and paying them.
Correct.
I like to look at this summary down here. We spent to date of what we anticipated taxpayer money, because we have the state grant, about 182 million, which when we look at the original projection of what we thought that would be back in 2018, we're about 85% of that full commitment. That's not what's borrowed. That's just what we've spent of the commitment that we're anticipating.
Correct.
Any questions on this? It's a big picture summary. We're going to still just dive into it a little more. And I'll go to page 2, I guess. This is a quick overview of.
It's the update on contingency expenditures. Section A is the owner's contingency that started at 2 million. What is principally drawn from that are amendments to the architect's contract or CHA's contract. Change from last month is that we have voided out the last amendment to CHA, which was for bringing in a geohydrologist, since the decision was made to abandon natural water sources for irrigation, and we're going to the MWRA system.
So we still have the balance in there.
Correct.
Yeah, that's down in here. And that goes to that. That's going to be fed into our total cost.
Yep.
Summary as well. Okay. And then the next page starts to talk about our original
construction contingency. Get to the bottom of the next page really is where we are at overall. It lists PCCOs to date. The last one, which was approved at the meeting last month, was number 40. And it gives the balance, which is a negative $2,200,449 against that specific contingency. So, and as we'll see on the subsequent pages, we balance that out. So keep going, Bill. And actually, page 4 is pretty much redundant to what we just looked at on page 3.
But this is our current GMP with Skanska.
That's correct.
Adjusted contract price.
That's correct.
Through PCCO
number 40. Yeah, through last month.
Right. Yep.
So the next page is based on the input from Skanska on submitted costs, anticipated costs, and so forth. So first item is PCCO 41, which will be presented to the building committee this morning for approval, and that's $255,883. Currently submitted as a PCO for active review that we go through on a weekly basis is the amount of $410,604. Okay, and then we've got the series of additional potential costs that Skanska tracks on a weekly basis, updates that every week. We do review these items every week at the building committee meeting. Different costs get shifted from one category to another from week to week. So they may go from an outstanding cost event to be moved up to an active change order under review once they're formally submitted. So we've got a total of outstanding cost events, $499,025. Total of pending revisions is a negative $10,399. And the least defined of the numbers is the total potential exposure costs at $586,329. So we add those all together for a total additional potential cost above the current GMP, $1,741,442, which would take the GMP to $256,339,992.
Don, I say this every month, but sometimes, and I think you're doing this more, cost exposure allowances in this category sometimes get pushed up to account for items in this category.
That as they progress, become better defined, yes.
So those somewhat cancel each other out and reduce exposure. In the end, what we know that this will be zero because we will not have any more exposures, some of which will come up to here to offset the costs as they present themselves as changes.
Correct.
I don't expect all of this to go and offset this, though. There's certainly still some things that are coming up that we probably have to deal with. That's why they're called, we call them the unknown unknowns. And then this is our summary that we look at every month.
Yep, this is where we pull it all together. The projected value starting from the top, total project budget has not changed, 295,542,274. The projected cost for SCANSA that we just identified with the potential adds to the current GMP amount is 256,339,992.
So just to be clear, today this is where we are. We went over that.
That is correct.
And then this column is what we project, the worst case sort of scenario. Everything.
Yep. Yeah, with all potential costs added in as we've just reviewed. So then we have the offsetting costs that we apply, which has been the same for last many months, is the two COVID cost reimbursements, totaling $1,331,473. We've got the builder's risk insurance claim, which is a couple of claims that have been submitted to Zurich, $407,200 as recoverable cost to bring our projected GMP value down to $254,601,319. With respect to the builder's risk claims, they are actively being reviewed at this point by the insurance company. We've had a couple of back and forths with them. Skanska is providing some updated information. They've done a pretty deep dive, particularly the one on the tech bank that was breached, as well as the water damage on the first floor. So they're in active review. We are reviewing their comments and responding accordingly. And it's a process, but it's moving forward.
And then these are our contingencies that offset our costs to see where we end up at the end of the job.
So, as example, owner's contingency, current amount, the $810,000 was adjusted this month by taking the potential costs we had involved for the hydrogeologist out of the mix. So that we're projecting a $800,000 expenditure against this item when we look at some other things that we have to clean up. The owner's construction contingency is as we mentioned, the negative $2,200,000 at today's value, and the additional $1.7 million projected to take us to the negative $3,941,841. We are still evaluating. We've been carrying for a good period of time the owner's allowances and Skanska's CM contingency at zero. We do need to take a closer look at that with Skanska and see if those are still accurate projections, particularly after the summer work. There was an awful lot of activity that got expended to allowances and contingencies that we need to take a good look at and see if these are still realistic or potentially if there are any savings. The soft cost contingency is at projected at $2,287,327. That is the number we draw from that original summary page. And that is the one I was saying that we need to, we are taking a harder look at some of these items to reevaluate if any adjustments need to be made to those numbers. And then we show the alternate funding sources for the COVID reimbursement, the 1,331,000. So we total everything up, and it is showing a current projected contingency, including all the contingencies, of $476,909 for this month.
That's at the end of the job.
At the end of the job.
We currently are at about 3 million, which represents about 12% of our original 25 million. And we, interestingly enough, have 12% of construction remaining done. We look to be about 88% complete with construction, given our billing. So we're tracking close in the deficit, and we appear to have $500,000 still remain at the end of the job, give or take. And down here is that summary month by month for the past 8 or 9 months. We have 9 months left to go. So if you remember at the start of the year, there was we laid out, the team laid out a plan. You've asked for a reserve, and it looks like we're still trying to honor that reserve with potentially hovering just around $500,000, sometimes a little over, sometimes a little under. So questions from committee members on this summary? No questions. I think this was almost identical to last month, so a lot fluctuating. When we come next month, I talked about extra time because ideally we have a discussion going on that talks about award for PV and other costs that are coming out of our PV budget, which we've kept in all of this of $2.6 million. So we haven't touched that. That's not where any of this funding is coming from. And out of the 2.6, there's this, the solar design, there's PV design costs, there's base building accommodations for PV, and then there's the PV vendor costs. We're going to see a list of that next month. And Don, I think that's going to take some time and understand where the allowances go for all of that. Okay, hearing no comments. The next
Bill,
page.
could I actually just follow up on that point that you just raised? Are you sort of foreshadowing that you anticipate the way that the kind of PV bids are going to come in and the way that'll proceed, that it may tap into that $500,000 reserve there, or should I not read that into what you just said?
Nope. I would say not. That's okay. Our plan still is, we've heard from our professional consultants of the cost per kilowatt hour, and we have 1.3 times that multiple, still seems to be within the 2.6, actually somewhere less than that, which is fine. We have design costs, we have base building costs that are also have to be factored into 2.6. When I say base building costs that are associated with PV installation. So to be very precise, we're awarding just the solar panels, right? The inverters, the solar panels, the racks, and the wiring. But there are other components that make PV solution, such as some roofing impact. We can't give that to the PV folks as a cost because we have an open contract under Chapter 149, so that has to go to the roofing subcontractor that we already have on board as a change order. What else? Wall. We're touching walls, bricks, masonry. Any scope associated with that has to go to the mason. Okay. Unlike another PV contract that would just go on top of a building that was complete, and the vendor would assume all costs. They're somewhat incidental. They're not at the main cost. We have to partition that to the subs that are already on the project. So they're and including the base building electrical scope. If there's anything like in the main electric gear or electrical room, that has to be done by our electrical contractor, Griffin, as a change order. So these are not being bid right now. Well, they're out for change order costs, but our bid award is for the PV vendor. That's what we've been talking about. But under the 2.6 million, it has to be all of this other cost too, because it's part of the PV system. So I hope I explained that, Tom. And
that's helpful. Thank you.
We're still looking to be on cost, but you also understand that we are planning to have an alternate or a plan B. If those costs start to creep a bit higher, we can pull back with these alternates. You could consider them deduct alternates, but the best way to bid a project is with add alternates. So we scale the project back and then we add to the full project. But that's a committee decision. If we're close and we want to tap into the $500,000 here to get the 1.3 megawatts, so that's certainly a committee decision. If we have extra, it's going to build on the $500,000, and we can put that back into the overall project contingency to help out the whole project. So we're going to have to see how those costs come out next month during our November meeting.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to just quickly, Don, I guess you're still up, review the rec. We have
this is the current requisition that was reviewed by the team, adjustments made to get to a final amount. It shows the adjusted contract total to date through PCC on number 40 at the 254, 598, 548. Total completed to date on the project by Skanska is 225 million and change.
That represents the 88% complete take-care ratio. Yeah.
Retainage being held is still a sizable amount of money at 5.3 million. And the current net payment due is 4,586,527.
Right here. I want to just call the committee's attention to the fact that we have a balance to finish, or basically a construction project that's under 30 million now to finish and pay. That's inclusive of PV as well. I say that because if you look back at this page, you know, we have approximately also $3 million currently as allowances and contingencies. We know we're going to spend a good part of that. We anticipate. We also know that we're paying for the $30 million of remaining. But when you look at that ratio, you could feel some more relief, and we could breathe a little easier because that represents about 10%. So we seem to be tracking well. I remember, Tom, you asked about that too. But we look at this project as a smaller and smaller project to finish up as we get closer and closer to the end. We're 9 months away, 9 or 10 months away billing. We're billing about $3 or $4 million a month. So that'll take us through the $30 million. Any questions? The remaining pages within this document are back up to what we've been talking about. That's the rec summary backup. And then these are the submitted costs and the outstanding costs. And you can see the detail in here. We typically don't go through this in detail. If the committee has questions on any of these line items, this is the time we usually go through.
This is the document that is submitted weekly by Skanska, and we do go through it on a weekly basis. It is, as I mentioned, costs change from week to week, from one category to the next as they progress up to becoming a PCO in for review and approval.
I know we spend a lot of time, committee members, going through this. It probably sounds like it's the same thing over and over. I can say since the beginning of the year, this has been tracking pretty consistently. So we haven't had any big nuts that come on here that were not anticipated, or at least weren't covered by allowances. That's why you see our number pretty much hovering around $500,000. Okay, I'm going to jump, Mike McAllister, I hope you're at a good place right now. I'm going to jump to invoices to pay because we are a bit of, well, we're going to lose Mike at some point.
Thanks, Bill. Just to confirm, you would prefer we approve by group, not individually, correct?
Correct, and I'm going to pull it up. I'm assuming, can you see?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good. So we usually do it by groups of 3. Today we could start with the first being the group of design professionals, and then the next group being vendors, and the final group being the construction contract.
Okay, sounds good. So Lisa, for the purposes of the meeting minutes, we'll go green first, yellow second, and blue third. So we have 11 items to be paid this month, and I'll start with the green. Invoice number 142981, paid to Anderson and Krieger in the amount of $58 on July 6, 2022, covering PO 23827. Second one is invoice number 143960, paid to Anderson and Krieger in the amount of $1,085 on October 4th, 2022, covering PO 23827. Third one is invoice 38840-40, paid to CHA in the amount of $132,000 on September 30th, covering PO 27953.
Michael, I don't know, going a little fast here, so sorry. I wasn't presenting. I forgot. So the Anderson Krieger are our legal support, and that had a bit to do with two things. One was the PV, helping us through the PV procurement legal stuff, and the other had to do with some clarifications and understanding of some lighting control issues within the building as we work towards a resolution with a lighting control vendor. So they were guiding us there. And then the CHA at the 132, that's their monthly draw. I'm sorry, Michael, I was just catching up.
No, that's okay. Thank you for slowing me down. The fourth one was also a CHA, invoice 38840-41, in the amount of $764.54 also on September 30th, which covers PO 27953.
Associates, Mike.
Okay. The fifth one in that group would be invoice 194464, paid to Perkins and Will in the amount of $103,721, also on September 30th, covering PO 23582. And the final in that group is invoice 7129, paid to Solar Design Associates in the amount of $8,918.75 on September 13th.
Solar Design finished their construction documents, Don. This was their invoice, their final invoice for construction documents, correct?
Right. From this point forward, it's contract administration and oversight of shop drawings.
So committee members, are there any comments on this group of design professionals as a whole? Any comments?
My only comment is I've never seen a $58 legal bill.
Tom, well, yeah. So other than that, it looked like that was a balance carried over that wasn't paid from a prior invoice, Bob, right? So, okay. That being said,
hearing none, I move approval of the professional invoices as stated into the record by Mike.
Pat, second.
Okay, committee members, please turn your mics on. All in favor, Emma Thurston?
Yes.
Patrice Garvin? John Phelan?
Yes.
Pat Bruce?
Yes.
Diane Miller?
Yes.
Dave Blazon?
Yes.
Tom Caputo?
Yes.
Joel Mooney?
Yes.
Kate Bowen?
Oh, and I.
Jamie Shea has left the room. Okay, Bob McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mike McAllister?
Yes.
And Bill Avallo, yes. Okay.
All right. The second group you have on your screen there in yellow, invoice 22763, paid to Construction Risk Partners in the amount of $10,599 on August 22nd for PO 29136.
And this is our builder. This is our, I think it's our final installment. Yeah, it'll be our final installment for the builder's risk insurance. And that's what we're paying here. A little late in paying this, so we're going to ask the town to cut a check pretty quickly, as we should have had this on last month's invoice packet. Okay, next one.
The second item in that group is invoice 4780467, paid to Local IQ New England in the amount of $259.96 on July 31st, 2022.
Don, was this advertisement for the PV?
This was local advertisement for when we were doing the pre-qualification process.
Okay.
The third one in that group is invoice 101362, paid to UTS in the amount of $10,085.64 on August 19th, covering PO 25176. And a follow-up to that, oh, go ahead.
This is for testing services for the month of August.
Yep. And the follow-up to that, the last in that yellow group is invoice 101-824, paid to UTS in the amount of $8,162 on September 16th for PO 25176.
This is their testing services for last month, right? Any comments, committee members, on these invoices, these 4 invoices for vendor services? And hearing none, may I have a motion to approve? Yeah.
Bob McLaughlin approve the 4 vending services invoices as read into the record by Mike McAllister.
Pat, second.
Okay, all in favor? Emma Thurston.
Yeah.
Patrice Garvin. John Phelan.
Yes.
Pat Bruce. Pat? I
Yes.
could hear you. Diane Miller.
Sorry.
Diane?
Yes.
Okay, Dave
Yes.
Blazon.
Dave Blazon, yes.
Okay, Tom Caputo.
Yes.
Joel Mooney.
Yes.
Kate Bowen.
Bowen, I.
Bob McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mike McAllister.
Yes.
Bill Lovello, yes. Okay.
And the final one you see in blue on your screen there, it's application number 45, paid to Skanska in the amount of $4,586,527 on October 4th, covering PO 23581.
So we had a review of this a bit earlier. Any comments or questions, committee members? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion approved?
Bob McLaughlin approves the Skanska application 45.
Pat, second.
Okay, all in favor, committee members, please turn your mics on. Emma Thurston.
Yes.
John Phelan.
Yes.
Pat Bruce.
Yes.
Diane Miller.
Yes.
Dave Blazon.
Yes.
Tom Caputo.
Yes.
Joel Mooney.
Yes.
Kate Bowen.
Bowen, I.
Bob McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mike McAllister.
Yes.
Bill Lovello, yes. Thank you.
All right, Bill, I appreciate you letting me move that up in the agenda. Thank you, everyone. That total amount this month is 4862180 and 89 cents. I'm going to jump off now, Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we'll jump back to our agenda in order then. We have a few changes that we wanted to hear about that are coming our way. They're not approved yet, but they were recently submitted. And I just have to find my cursor. Too many screens. Sometimes this happens. Probably in the next office somewhere. There we go. So the first one I'll share with you is this you, Tony, that's going to go through this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is PCO, potential change order 734.
That's to do with the bariatric lifts in life skills classrooms.
Can you explain those two things, bariatric lifts and life skills classrooms?
Bariatric lift is something that helps a handicapped person move from a wheelchair to some other apparatus like a bed or something that they may be working on in life skills.
And so this life skills, that's an area in the building that we are using for lab, correct?
Correct. That's an F1.
Okay, thank you. So F wing, first floor, lab. So this is a special lift for moving people with mobility issues in our lab classrooms. Okay, what's going on?
So there was some misscope / coordination with the manufacturer and how they're supporting and attaching to structure. There was an RFI written. Structural engineer of record recommended against attaching unistrut to the slab on deck above. So now there needs to be further investigation on how to attach. So the other option was to attach to the steel framing for the second floor. And some of this has been determined that the manufacturer has some responsibility here. Skanska has gone back to them for an updated proposal. We've yet to receive that, and this is it's still in review with some back and forth between the design team and Skanska.
Okay, right now the total exposure is 13,281. And you're saying that might change?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for community members on this one?
It's Emma, just a real quick question. So when you say, so is that we may get some of that back, is that what you're saying? Of the manufacturer's issues?
They may be actually having to own that under their bid.
Gotcha. Just wanted that, clarify that. Thank you.
Or there may be allowances, Emma, that can cover this, that are within our GMP as well, that would be evaluated. Okay, next one is 759. Zoom in here. Called relocation of fan 18 in field house.
So this is the fan that circulates the air within the field house for ventilation. This was originally drawn to be on the south wall, accessing an existing louver in the car wall system. Unfortunately, the CFMs needed to get into that unit and circulate the air. The louver was too small. The car wall on that side of the building is staggered. We can't cut it to make room for a new, sorry, a new louver. So it was decided that we had to move that to a location where we could remove the entire panel and put an approved size louver in there, which moved it to the northeast corner of the field house above gym storage. And this is the cost associated with relocating that and repiping electrical to it.
So right now the total exposure is a little about $29,500. Okay, not million.
Not million, Bill.
Any questions on that? This is in place, correct?
It is.
Yeah. So the bariatric lift is not in place when we had prior. This one is in place. Yeah. So they're looking back at the costs on this one. And now the last one we have is 760, which is not in place, although some of this may be going in right now. This is the added ventilation for the middle school art wing. It's actually air filtration for particulates in the 3D art room classroom. So that would be having to do with clay for pottery.
Right. So this PCO has two different parts to it that are incorporated into the same PCO. So the added room ventilation units that are going in the classrooms that Bill described is one part of it, and the other part is the exhaust for the kilns. So when we removed the exhaust for the kilns, we ended up underneath the projected costs for the added art room ventilation. So this is the cost to add that ventilation.
Again, it's filtration, but yeah. So this is the added scope that was probably missed. Help me out, Pat, in some communication, but we have one kiln. We also are accommodating a future kiln with ventilation, but not the kiln itself. And I think this cost here is for the additional ventilation of the future kiln that's going in the building infrastructure, not the kiln itself. And so the original kiln that's going in here already had its own ventilation. This is to improve for the future ventilation of a future kiln. And then the other part, I think the committee members remember a discussion that there was concern among staff of getting a higher level of filtration in these rooms because of clay particulates. The design team met the standards for teaching environments with art room using clay. This has gone a step ahead of that. And we looked at several versions of this with the school department. The one version I remember was about $250,000. This one that we selected was in the range estimated at 100,000. I think we're somewhere around hovering around 65, 70,000 within this one. So we came in under what was being projected, what Tony said. But these are not final costs, so these are still being vetted. Any questions from committee members? Okay.
I have a quick question, Bill. What is the plan for the future kiln? Can you share a little bit about that so we understand from a community perspective?
Sure. Kate, there's a space for the kiln. There's now going to be the infrastructure for the kiln. And if and when the school department adds a second kiln to their program, it's ready to be hooked up. Did I say that right, Pat?
Yep. There isn't one now, Kate. It isn't.
There, and there wasn't one
right now, and there wasn't one. But the plan is that in the future, we're trying to provide for the future.
Right. So just to be 100% clear, there is one. There's not two.
Oh, you're correct. There's not.
The one will be moved over and will be hooked up. It will be fully operational. But if school department gets a second kiln in the future, all the infrastructure is there for.
Yeah, we don't want them ripping through the walls.
Right.
And there was one in the original high school when we started this project.
So this sounds like a good expansion for the additional grades that'll be on location.
That as well, Kate, yes. So this feeds both 7th and 8th 3D art rooms and high school art rooms. The kiln room is between those two 3D art classrooms, so it's a separate, skinnier room. And yes, they have flexibility to be able to work with both middle school and high school. And but by the looks of the layers of the cost, Kate, I think the higher cost is putting the infrastructure in, going from the first floor all the way up to the roof versus buying the kiln. The art room, I think, in the old school was on the second floor, which meant exhausting it was very easy straight up because the roof is right overhead. Here, it's a little more complicated. It's a lot more complicated, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? So Brian Spangler, I missed your component, which is just talking about, not just talking about some of the future changes or future scope revisions that you are working on as a design team to be issued in the short term here in the next few weeks.
Sure. Yeah, so as I note, every month, this list ebbs and flows with things that are going on site. As things come up from your side, the owner side, issues on the construction side, documentation issues. So this is where we track them. The OME numbers there, the actual dollar value is provided by Skanska, helps us kind of track where we're headed. And some of those numbers were presented earlier by Don. So again, this is, just a snapshot in time as of the 6th. It's already changed a bit since then, but yeah, I don't think I have any other specific things to note on this list, Bill, unless you'd like me to go through something in more detail.
Now, some of the bigger numbers here, we have some adjustments that are going on to the landscape on the phase 2 side, not necessarily landscape, but the fields, making some tweaks here, some of which were recommended by DPW. Others are accommodating some of the needs of those fields. That's being worked out. We have a cost, it's fairly large, to add another drain on Golden at the corner of Golden Street and Concord Ave due to the site conditions. We don't have good drainage right at the corner. That cost is fairly large, but we also recognize that we may have an extensive amount of milling along Concord Ave that's not needed because it's beyond the scope of the work that we have planned. So we're looking at savings to offset that cost. We're meeting with DPW and Office of Community Development to talk about that. You recognized last month that we had a decision to go to MWRA water source for irrigation of fields with a reasonable amount of savings associated with that. So that's showing up here, finalizing all that. That number, I think, is conservative. I expect that number to grow. We're still waiting for final costs, so we didn't want to put big numbers in here. And there's a recommendation to maybe look at from Kate, a newer piece of equipment for aeration. Makes sense, help for healthier fields and less irrigation. So possibly some of this savings will go to offset a piece of equipment if the town doesn't have that type of equipment. So we continue to look for savings, and the team has been doing a good job evaluating everything as we move forward. Any questions? Looking down on my list here, that brings us to the next two items are approvals, and then we wrap up our approvals and votes for the meeting. The next item is prime contract change order number 41. And I'll share that, and I'm asking who is going to go through this. I think it's you, Brian, right?
That's me. Yep.
And we typically do, so associated with this document that committee receives is an explanation for all of these items on the list. I can count, I think, but we typically go through items in detail, at least that Brian recites, for values greater than, what was the threshold?
10,000.
10,000, yeah. So that doesn't mean we won't stop or we won't go back and talk about any of the ones that committee members want to talk about. So Brian, I'll let you get started on this.
Okay, sounds good. Starting at the top here, we have, sorry, Bill, I have a PCO 666R1 at the top. Do I have a different list than you? Okay, well, anyway, PCO 752, painting of temporary stair in space. Cost in this PCO is to provide a painted finish on the interior of the temporary egress stair enclosure. We did not call for any type of finish other than taped and sanded drywall for this temporary space, which will eventually completely be demolished. Moving down to 731 R1, structural modifications due to unforeseen conditions at the gym. This is the southeast corner of the field house where we have new construction interacting and overlapping with the existing construction. So we've always had in the documents some level of refinishing this corner to kind of bridge the gap between the new and the old. That involves taking off some of the existing brick, face brick, keeping some of the existing face brick, providing new cladding. As we were doing selective demo in this area, we just kept uncovering unforeseen conditions. We ended up having to replace a significant portion of the CMU we call the backup wall, which you actually see the back of it from the inside of the small gym. That provides more or less the structural integrity for the face brick that's basically attached back to that wall. There were sections of that really were not stable, that needed to be replaced. We had also been hoping to reuse much of the face brick. That's the brick that you see from the outside in this area. Once the old building was torn off, there was an old, there was a staircase there that was part of the old school. We discovered that the face brick that had been on the outside of the building was not in the same plane as the interior portion. And there were stability issues with that as well. So rather than trying to basically spot fix all of the masonry, which would have been more costly, we felt it was best to just take that brick off and put new metal paddle cladding on to match the cladding language of the new building in that area. And I think that was about it. There were some small modifications that needed to be made to some existing steel there. But the vast majority of this involved masonry and recladding that corner. Moving down to 7.
Brian,
yeah.
So I do have the wrong, I don't know why, cover sheet. So PCCO 41, as it will be submitted or for approval, includes 666R1 for a value of $22,654. So I'm going to write that in, and I'll change the value at the bottom that we're going to ask for approval, and maybe you could explain what that one is about.
Sure.
Right up in here. Anyway.
Thanks for confirming. I'm not going crazy. So 666R1, the title for this is saw cutting the slab for art room sliding door tracks. So in the art rooms at level 1 of the D wing in the middle school, we have basically sliding panels that are floor to ceiling. They have writing surfaces on them, tackboard surface. It's kind of a multi-use, multi-purpose surface. And the idea behind these is that they slide kind of like a closet door. So you can slide them out of the way to access casework, cabinets and storage that are behind these panels. So kind of gives a lot more flexibility and a lot more usability to what's in the room. So originally for these sliding panels, we had shown in the documents a surface mounted floor track. So that's just a track that gets basically bolted, lag bolted down into the slab. When we reviewed the shop drawings that the manufacturer and the subcontractor put together, they communicated that they really would recommend a recessed track instead. And the reason for that is because it provides a little more strength when pressure is applied to the panels. So imagine students and teachers will be writing on these, pinning things on them, they'll be pushing them. So a recessed track was the recommended way to go. The cost, the $22,000, $22,654 here is not to provide the track itself, but it's to provide a recess in the slab that the track can fit into, which was not originally owned because we had surface mounted track prior. I'm going to move down to 747 R1. The cost here is to add an exterior ladder to access a section of the roof that composes kind of the connection to the new and the old at the field house. We didn't show an access ladder to this low section of roof prior, but we will need to have access there to maintenance HVAC equipment that's on the roof. So this ladder is a very basic, I'm sure you've all seen them. It's just a very basic with 2 flat bar metal rails and pretty standard rungs. There's really nothing too grand about it. Moving down to PCO 758, cost here is to provide some CMU block infill where we had removed existing ductwork that was demolished and won't be used. The voids will not be used. So we really had to infill these voids that were left by this ductwork to maintain separation between the locker room spaces. And moving down to 766. The cost here, this is the phase 2 counterpart to the same costs that we had in phase 1, which was to lower a ceiling soffit at the classroom door entry condition to conceal a diagonal steel brace members. These are at our standard classroom entry. If you might all recall, has basically 2 doors next to each other, and off of the corridor, there's a little recess there. And we have a drywall ceiling there that was shown at a certain height. If it had been installed at that height, you would have been seeing some of the structural steel, just a little bit of the diagonal brace. So we lowered those. So the cost here is to provide the additional framing and fascia for those soffits in the phase 2 portion of the building only. Moving down to PCO 751 R1. This is another masonry repair condition in the small gym. The cost here is to repair and infill several voids and openings and damage that have been caused over the years from a variety of different things. For the CMU walls that enclose the small gym, these walls are all exposed to view. So we have wall padding that goes up to a certain level in the small gym. We didn't bother with repairing the block that is concealed by the wall padding. So this is all repair that was required above the wall padding and is visible. And this also included, by the way, there were old junction boxes, electrical junction boxes that had been abandoned over time. Some of them had wiring in them. So in order to meet code, you can't have any decommissioned wiring just terminated in electrical boxes. That has to be removed by code. So there was some of that cleanup basically as well. And lastly, we have PCO 741. The cost here is to provide some additional steel support for some existing to remain masonry that became unstable following demolition to install new work. So this is where we put in a new hollow metal frame and some glass in the southeast corner of the field house. For those that have been in there, that was installed this summer, provides some borrowed light in from the alt PE room into the field house. And what had been there prior was just a solid CMU wall. Once we removed basically a section of the CMU in the middle of the wall, we had made an assumption about the block above this opening being supported by an existing roof that was on the other side. That assumption turned out to be incorrect. So because some of that block remained at the head of the hollow metal frame, we needed to make sure that that block was properly supported. So this is to add a steel plate and an angle to achieve that. And that's it for items that exceed 10 grand. And as Bill mentioned, I'm happy to go through any of the others if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
So there are a few questions. I'll say the revised total, and I'm sorry that I have the wrong number here, but I edited it while Brian was talking. For this PCCO number 41 is $255,833. If approved, it'll change our GMP value to $254,854,433. Of the 255, approximately $113,000 is due to latent conditions, Brian, of 4 of these that you recited, if you add them all up, with the field house work past year, with the support of CMU and the block wall infills and the exterior wall, all that adds up to about $114,000. So a sizable chunk for this total cost. 2 hands are up right now from committee members. Emma Thurston, your hand looks to be first.
Just 2 quick questions, hope quick. One, this is a little bit trivial, but can I get clarification on why we're painting the temporary staircase that's coming down in about 9 months? And then the second question is how many more, like I know the field house had underlying conditions that we didn't know about until we got into the walls and whatnot. Are we nearing the end of those now? So
let me take the second one first. We're probably still flushing out a few of those on final costs for the approval of the building committee, but all of them are captured within our total project as well as these total project costs. So we have these in there, Emma, but we have to work through the actual cost impact, scope impact, and then get it to committee members for final approval. So I don't know how many others, so I'm going to ask Paige or Brian, do we know how many others are waiting for final approval for committee? They're still within our total project budget for the project.
I would say somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen left to be fleshed out. But again, like you said, exposure wise, we're well covered in the outstanding cost event section.
And probably they're not six figures either.
No, it's probably 12 RFIs. And just specific, areas of the space where we had questions and Brian answered, and nothing major, but almost like death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. Like we just had so many questions in that space as we uncovered conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure we were working through those. Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's a gift. I keep saying the gift that keeps giving, Fieldhouse.
And the temp stair, I can answer that one as well.
Okay.
That's from actually last summer. I don't know why it took so long to get into a PCO. But ultimately what occurred there was a classic filed sub bid scenario where the general drawings, which was the phasing drawings, didn't have the painting scope. So it was really just a catch up one. So the staircase will have been painted for 2 school years, which we all think is the right thing to have done back then. But that's the story behind that one.
And the answer was so that it could be maintained, the walls, for cleaning and so forth. Suppose we could have just left them and let whatever happens. But the thought was to have a surface that you could clean for 2 years.
No, that makes sense. It was painting. So I thought it was something that happened more recently because it isn't something to necessarily work through. So thanks.
Bob McLaughlin has his hand up.
Yeah, Emma asked the first question I had, which was the staircase for $14,000 or temporary, but now I understand that. My second question was the exterior ladder for $22,190, which you described as a basic ladder. That just strikes me as an awful lot of money for a ladder.
Brian, can you explain that? It's not a ladder you'd get from Home Depot.
Well, sure. It is. Yep. It is. So this was submitted by the miscellaneous metals contractor, which has had very competitive pricing throughout the project. We, as part of our review, we make sure that the scope that they're charging us is correct. So when they're saying, we need a whatever size bar stock it is or whatever size rung it is, we're confirming linear feet or square footage and those kinds of things. And they're telling us this is what we can get the materials for. And the cost of those materials, and this ladder, by the way, includes about 3 square feet of grading on top so you kind of climb the short side to get up over the parapet and then back down to the low side. And there's a railing component on top as well. So even though it is simple, the material costs and the labor costs that the sub is charging us for just on quantity and hours alone seemed fair. Were fair, but we've just been up against very high labor and materials costs on these change orders, especially from the Miss Metal sub.
Yeah, in addition to that, I can just elaborate a little bit more. So the Roman iron cost was $14,000, but there's also cost in here for blocking for the ladder itself so that it's supported into the wall. And then we had already waterproofed this area. So I believe that there's a little bit of cost, not a lot of money. I think it's like $1,000 to re-waterproof it. So there's a little bit more, embedded into this change than just the cost of the ladder.
And then to step back, Bob, I know I asked, what are the options to get up to this roof that needs access, and what's the most cost effective? So the team, before they even issued this change, if I recall, looked at various solutions and reviewed with Dave Blazon. This seemed to be the most appropriate and I think the best value that we could go for. Am I right, team?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a good point to mention that this change originally had 2 separate ladders. One to get you down to the area we're talking about, and then another one to allow someone to puddle jump basically over to the old boiler room roof. So worked with Dave and he was okay with for that roof, providing access with a scissor lift. So there we're only providing roof tie-offs to meet the OSHA tie-off requirement. But that was a great effort to eliminate costs. So we appreciated Dave's help on that.
Okay, any more comments? I'd like to get approval of PCCO 41 in the amount of $255,883.
So moved, Bob McLaughlin.
Pat, second.
Okay, committee members, please turn your mics on. All in favor, Emma Thurston,
Yes.
John Phelan left, Pat Bruce,
Yes.
Diane Miller,
Yes.
Dave Blazon,
Yes.
Tom Caputo has left the room, Joel Mooney,
Yes.
Kate Bowen,
Bowen, I.
Bob McLaughlin,
Yes.
and Bill Lovallo, yes. Mike McAllister left the room. So we have one more approval. Hopefully no one has to leave for this one. Thank you, folks. And that would be a discussion of technology and release of some scope for phase 2. So with that, I'm not sure, Doug, you're ready to present if Steve Mazzola joined us, but Doug, I know you're well versed and you communicate quite a bit with Steve Mazzola.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Yep, I'm ready to present the updated information. Can you hear me okay?
We can, and can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay.
So we have some updated information that we're going to be looking for approval on today. It's really continuing the procurement process for technology into phase 2. I'm going to start with a quick budget summary and then talk about what we're looking for in terms of approval, and then discuss the next steps that'll be occurring over the next couple of months.
I'm going to zoom in on this.
Yep, we can zoom in there. So phase 2 estimate, the second number in from the right, you can see it down the bottom is $723,684.99. That's where we stood last month before we approved the CCS. Actually, I think this goes back to August, forgive me. This is before we approved the CCS and HubTech scope for the phase 2 smart displays and storage. As you know, there were some savings that were realized as a result of taking advantage of some specials that Smart had at that time. So the final column to the right, that's where we are right now. As you can see, the savings, the bottom line is, of course, where we are under budget presently. So the last time I presented, we were around $723,000 under budget. Right now, after that savings, we're around $794,000. Up the very top, you'll see the number of $125,399. That is the total of the quotes that we're looking for approval on during this meeting. So as you can see, we're still in pretty good shape.
Doug, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, yes, Bill, thank you.
So everything in my world that price-wise is going up, construction, all this sort of stuff. How are we able to, and don't get me wrong, you've been magically doing this, but how are we able to procure through a process of multiple years and finding more value for Belmont? Meaning the price keeps going down.
Well, the last procurement phase was a little unique in that we stuck with the technology that we used in phase 1. And at that time, Smart was trying to get rid of all of that inventory. So we took advantage of that. And there wasn't much difference between the technology we bought for phase 1 and what's available now. And we also had some lead time issues to contend with potentially on the updated technology. So we got better pricing because, as everyone knows, yep, there's inflation, but technology gets better and the price of the same technology goes down over time. It's like, I don't know if anyone saw the new Oculus that just came out. The new one's $1,500, but you can buy the regular one is $399, and that's not a great comparison here because that's a very different technology and there are huge leaps and bounds, but it just gives you an idea of how some technology pricing works. Now, that said, when we're moving into the final procurement phase in November and December for the remaining technology, I anticipate some of those prices going up a little. So what I was about to say was I wouldn't bank on that $794 just yet. I think our total budget's going to leave us somewhere between those two numbers at the end of the day for a total cost savings. And the other part is we just stay on top of this stuff on a weekly basis. And if there are any savings that can be had on the technology side, we're happy to just go above and beyond and try to take advantage of those things.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next slide.
Yes, please. So these are the two items. They're two separate items we'd be looking for approval on. One is for the wireless. That's all of the wireless access points remaining for phase 2. That's $81,762.47. That's for LCN. LCN is a phase 1 vendor. We're sticking with them. And the second item, $43,636.53 is for the voice over IP system, which is the telephone system, and that is NEC. That is also the same vendor as phase 1. I should clarify one thing on the LCN side. They did all the network configuration and installation. They did not, however, install the access points for phase 1. But we weren't too happy with the overall performance of that vendor, so we swapped over to LCN for phase 2. So the total of these two quotes is $125,399, which equates to that first line item on the spreadsheet that we just looked at.
And these are state vendors, so we didn't have to go through the pure procurement. Yeah. Yep. So abbreviated procurement process.
Exactly.
Good.
And we're parlaying on to the phase 1 procurement in terms of all the terms and conditions that were set forth before. So we are looking for two purchase orders, so 2 approvals for those amounts that I just described.
Okay, and we'll take a vote on that shortly, but what's next? You say here.
Sure, so next, I've been working with Steve diligently on finalizing the remaining equipment for technology for the rest of the school, which is essentially computers and peripherals. We're working with Dell and HubTech, which is again phase one state contract vendors that will be working with us on the rollout for the remaining technology. And I know you guys have a busy November, so you'll probably see me again in December for approval on those items.
We'll give you a few extra weeks then. There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So any questions from committee members before we ask for a motion approval?
Yeah, why can't we group these two together at $125,399?
2 separate vendors, 2 separate POs for.
Well, that's what we have. That's what we have with when Mike goes through his groups.
This has to do with the invoicing. So these different companies invoice, and we pay against those invoices, pay against the PO, specific PO for that particular vendor.
I know what Bob's saying, but Bob, in the amount of time we're going to discuss this, I'll have it done. Okay.
You're talking about, oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I'll try to be efficient. Hearing none. Bob, first one. Can we get a motion?
Move approval of the first one, the amount of $81,762.47.
Pat, second.
Okay. All in favor, committee members, please turn your mics on. Emma Thurston.
Yes.
Pat Bruce.
Yes.
Diane Miller.
Yes.
Dave Blazon.
Yes.
Joel Mooney.
Yes.
Kate Bowen.
Oh, and I.
Bob McLaughlin.
Yes.
And Bill Lovallo, yes. And the next one.
Move approval of the second one, NEC/VOIP in the amount of $43,636.53.
Pat, second.
All in favor, Emma Thurston.
Yes.
Pat Bruce.
Yes.
Diane Miller.
Yes.
Dave Blazon.
Yes.
Joel Mooney. Joel.
Yes.
Thank you. Kate Bowen.
Oh, and I.
Bob McLaughlin.
Yes.
Bill Lovallo, yes. Okay, and that should conclude. Thank you, by the way, Doug, for a very effective presentation. Look forward to the next one as we continue to have a pretty good reserve there. Help us out. And Doug, after December, are we going to be pretty much bought out for our technology side for the whole project?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we wrap up our scheduled agenda with a couple of presentations. First one, both from Skanska, first one being construction update, activities and such, and then the second being the construction schedule, which might spend a little more time because it took a different look. So let me present this, and is this you, Paige?
It is.
Okay.
Okay, so September. So as I mentioned before, we were working to relocate our site trailers to finish the roadway work, which really took the whole month of September to complete. And in addition to that, we've been actively working on field construction, inclusive of foundations, which is exciting to see. On the exterior of the building, we are substantially complete watertight wise, which means that we have all of the glass in place with the exception of a couple of locations where we are using it for access purposes. But as far as gearing up for the winter, we are in a position where we are weather tight, which is great. And then interior wise, we've been working in area D, a lot of drywall going in on D2, D3, and D4. And at the beginning of this month, D1, and we're progressing with painting right behind drywall. So actively working in those spaces, getting to the point where we're close to finishes, which is exciting. As Tony mentioned, we did start intumescent fireproofing last month. That's been ongoing, should complete in the next probably week or so. In area F, Griffin has moved, and you'll see on the schedule in a minute, but they are critical path for their in-wall rough-in activities. So they've moved over to area F. They completed area D really the beginning of this month, end of last month. And then rough-in activities for ductwork, they're well ahead of Griffin, but they are progressing as well in area F.
Griffin is electrical contractor.
Yes, sorry, clarify that. And then looking ahead, like we discussed at the beginning, finishing that roadway, getting granite curbing in is a huge focus for us in the month of October so that we can move site parking back on site. As far as exterior scope, we're down to heavy push on masonry on the F wing. They just rounded the corner onto F West, which is exciting to see, getting close to the end. And then the other exterior piece that is now ongoing is the metal panel scope, which is inclusive of the arcade ceilings, as well as the actual at the stair ends at area D and F. We've started preparing to get the metal panel installed at those locations as well. And then interior wise, like I said, the drywall will follow the electrician around. So F2 is our next stop for drywall. And then F3 and then F1. So we're continuing on in that sequence with the MEP trades and then drywall following close behind. I will say one thing to note, the tile has mobilized, the wall tile on D2 started, and we have casework coming at the end of this month. So just a couple.
All seems well ahead compared to where we were in phase one.
Yes, significantly. Okay, so this is what I was just discussing. That will be metal panel. So that's the girt and insulation going in place on those walls at the stair ends. Electrical room rough-in is well underway. This is some framing and MEP rough-in. You can see chill beams installed. You can see insulation. So we're making really good progress with overhead mechanical systems. A similar photo just with MEP rough-in going on. This is a photo looking east of our site. As you can see, we're pretty much up to subgrade, and we're moving west to east as far as how we're progressing with site foundations. So Brendan Grant Field, which is the farthest field east, is our last stop, and that's where all of our stockpiles are. So the idea is that we're working our way to removing all of those piles so that by the time we get to Brendan Grant, we're in a position where we can get up to subgrade over there as well. Similar photo, chill beams.
The chill beams here.
Yeah.
This must be the third floor. It looks like a roof drain.
Mm-hmm. So this is looking out at the media center. You can see that the electrician's well underway. There's some lights, light boxes hanging in the ceiling. So and then intumescent going in. You can see the protection on the wall, on the curtain wall. That is the intumescent scope going in place right now. This is D2. So this is our farthest along floor. And you can see all the drywall is in and the room is primed. And
science room, right? Science room.
Yep. And and you can see actually the ceiling gray is in this room as well in this photo. So you can see kind of, this is our most complete floor. And then we have our
painting
mock-up. Yep. Painting. I think this was our mock-up room, but yeah, we've progressed very much painting on D2 and D3 so far. So.
Do you paint the walls before you put the grid in?
Yes, we do. Not final. This is not final coat.
Right.
We'll come back and do final coat, but yeah, we try to get a coat of paint and color on the wall.
Any questions from committee members? Wrapping up with a new look at the schedule.
Yes.
I think Kate spent some time looking at this, so that's pretty cool.
Okay, so it follows the sequence that I just sort of outlined as far as our update. But for the first section, we have our HVAC activities, and they are ahead of our electrical activities, which is what I just mentioned. The electrician is last, mainly because they are required to have a weather-tight space before they can pull wire. So that's why they are always last. And then as soon as they have their sign off and the plumber has his sign off, that is when we can board walls. So that's why drywall follows. What is critical path for us is our drywall schedule. As you can see, it turns red. In addition to that, the electrical scope is really pretty much critical path. I think we have a day or two of float there, which is why it's not red. But realistically, the electrician goes, drywall goes, and then casework goes. And as I mentioned, the end of this month, we'll have casework here. And Bill, to your point, I remember casework showing up in June, turning over in September. It was a mad dash to the finish line. So this is a huge improvement. So that is a very good sign. And then flooring follows the casework. So that pretty much gets us to the end, which is when we do all of our final inspections, all of our walkthroughs, testing and balancing of HVAC systems. So that's kind of how we get to the end of the project. Obviously, there's a ton of other activities in the middle of this, but this is our quote unquote critical path.
So we still have substantial completion in July, but and that's 40 weeks from this week, folks. 40 weeks. That's not a lot, but what's most impressive and most important to keep that going is these final inspections in March and April to allow us to start to go through phasing, right?
That's correct. So yeah, we have right now, it's a placeholder, the next activity down, complete phase 1, phase 2 integration, 94 days. But that is really what we've been focusing on developing as far as how exactly we get that piece of the puzzle done. So that's been a huge focus of our team. So you may see a little bit more detail. We try to keep this to one page, but as we get further in, we can show more of how we're thinking about this completion.
And I think in the coming months, we'll talk about what that means, because what that means is that we have full use of the phase 2 that allows not bringing any middle schoolers in, but allowing us to decommission those rooms that are on the phasing line and putting students, maybe moving students, but certainly moving egress away from that temp stair that we talked about earlier so that demolition could get started, because that's a big effort.
Mm-hmm.
So any questions from committee members?
Yeah, I think you just answered it for me, Bill. I was just curious if that the phase 1, phase 2 integration is primarily knocking that wall down.
Yes.
And I assume that's got to be done when school is not in session.
So,
or do we know that yet?
No, we're putting a schedule together, but some of this is not necessarily loud work. And what we're trying to do is find ways to move students out of those rooms that are sharing that wall so that we could then start that work. because it has to happen before the summer. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It could be a weekend, it could be some of that Saturday. We have some right, Paige, we've got some allowances in there for some weekend work here and there. We've got it. So the team is putting together this logistics plan, and then we will be meeting with the school department, I think in November, if not this month. I think it's probably been more like November to start talking about what this looks like. So we'll have more answers on that, I think I'd say by the end of the year. Okay, that concluded the agenda for today. Right, yes. So at this point, I'm going to ask if the committee members have any more comments on what we presented. And if not, and I don't see that, I know that I have two folks from the community with their hands raised. So Brian, thank you for patiently waiting. I do want to say that some of the comments that you heard earlier on about the PV scope review and getting an addendum out had input from you and your group that provided very useful suggestions that are being reviewed and incorporated into the bid documents. Brian.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Hey, just three for you, and some of it's good and some of it's curiosity. So could you just go over the base PV, what that actual size is, plus the size KW this is of add 1 plus add 2, and how that all adds up to 1.3 megawatts? That would be appreciated.
I don't have that information. I'm sorry, Brian. But I know that the base plus alt 1 and alt 2 adds up to the total. I don't know what the breakdown is, but I just don't know what the breakdown is.
Okay. Hopefully it's a megawatt. I guess another area of, so it'd be great next time if we could have that.
Yeah, so Brian, just let me say it a different way. The goal is we're bidding the whole job, and then we'd have deducts if we had some excess. But the most cost advantage way to bid a job is to do it through add alternate. So the base is not really the base that we've always planned. It's all base plus 2 add alternates. We're doing it in a more proactive way so that we can get the best value, which is add alternates, not deduct alternates. Never get the best value. Yeah.
I appreciate that. All due respect, it sounded like Don White had commented that it was a means to reduce the project. That's all those add alternates. So curious to know what those reduction capacity levers are, which I understand if the budget goes away, that's you have to have that prudently. So I just want to understand that. So anyways, maybe next time you could clarify that.
Yeah, Brian, we didn't look at specifically those capacities. We did it geographically in terms of different areas in the building that could be disseminated from one area to the next.
Right.
So the base bid is the 4th floor roof. That's a clear start and stop point. Alt 1 is the 3rd floor D roof. That's a clear start and stop point. And the second alt is the F roof, 3rd floor roof, a clear start and stop point.
Okay. Well, I would think SDA could probably analyze pretty quickly what the percentage of those add alternates is of the total.
We can do that. We haven't done that yet. This is just to provide an option to the owner in the event that we have a budgetary problem with the overall price.
I understand. So it just would help us who are on the outside who want to see the full, also know what the downside risk is. So appreciate that. So can I understand a little bit of concern around a leak history? And I appreciate if I haven't been listening in on these so frequently, but what is the exposure? I know there was an insurance claim referenced. Is there continuing leakage? There was reference to it being weather tight for the winter, but I'm looking ahead to a solar installation. And the last thing you want to have is a big snafu on your hands with cross claims and removing solar to get at a leaky roof. So that I just want to make sure, where does that stand and how tight are we in terms of going forward on a roof that's sealed and is not going to have a going forward leak problem?
I'll take that. So there are no roof leaks, Brian. The insurance claim had to do with something that happened last summer, which was a pipe that was filled with water without validating that the end of the pipe was closed. So contractor turned the main valve on and flooded a ceiling overhead because the other end of the pipe was open. And that resulted in damage to a finished ceiling and a big cleanup. Had nothing to do with the roof. Our roofs are not leaking. We're ready for PV on the roofs.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. That was some scuttlebutt or whatever. That's the problem with secondhand information in the community. Third is optimistic. The Climate and more pointedly Inflation Reduction Act, as you may know, includes a 15% investment tax credit for municipal solar projects after December 31, 2022, to the extent that they're 100% municipal exempt bond finance. And I'm just curious, is that, are you all aware of that, and are you preparing to apply for that? And therefore, is that something we could add to the alternate financing sources to include as part of a fund for solar to hopefully get us over the full 1.3 megawatts? And I can send you the link to that article that I pulled up as a reference point, which gives in the detail about that tax credit, which is in cash form for tax exempt entities like the school building committee.
So Brian, you were the one who alerted me to this, and thanks to our legislators that became real. I mentioned this to committee members a long while back, probably last month, if any more was 2 months ago. And it is on my radar. We have been pretty focused on getting this PV bid and awarded. And as you mentioned, this is something that happens a little later, so that will be the next step. And it's got a couple of layers because the building committee doesn't own the PV, so we have to look into how those tax credits are received by the town. It's all good for taxpayers, and then what it means to this building committee as far as budgets. It may be a windfall for the school department, or there could be some offsetting if they receive the value. Maybe they're paying some direct costs for this. So we haven't unpacked that. It is definitely on. We brought it up, and we're definitely interested in pursuing that, and we will. And maybe I'll tap into you a little bit more to get that started, but trying to get the PV awarded first.
Okay, that's $390,000. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's the number I remember too. It's
okay.
So we have to figure that out. We can't go away with 390 because that's if we spent all 2.6, but we'll have to evaluate exactly what that means. It's a big number, certainly a big, over $250,000, I would expect. We could use it too, Brian. Okay, the other Brian, good morning.
Hi, Brian Eiler, the other Brian.
I didn't mean that in a bad way.
No, that's okay. I defer to Brian Kay for his expertise at all times, and I'm glad you include him in your planning and so on. He's a real asset to the community. So two things. One, quickly, I was a little disturbed, and I think many people are, that PV has been split into three pieces, which kind of introduces the possibility of not completing the full project and getting the full 1.3 megawatts, despite assurances from the committee that the full 1.3 would be delivered. So I have a lot of concern with that. If I shouldn't be concerned, please let us know why we shouldn't be concerned about that. But it kind of seems like you're paving the way or making it easy to snip off pieces of the PV to save money for other purposes. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that's inaccurate, Brian, and I'll say why. We have said this from the very start. We have $2.6 million allocated to PV. That hasn't been changed. We mentioned that earlier in the meeting. We don't know what the costs are going to come in at. If the cost for the full system comes in over 2.6, we're dead in the water. We can't fund it. We're dead in the water. Now we'd have to go back and rebid this process all over again. It's going to take months and potentially delays. Maybe the costs are inflating at the time. So we looked at a way to smartly bid this to make a decision if we can't fund the full 1.3 because our budget isn't sufficient. We've been advised that our budget is sufficient, but we're being proactive in saying, what is a potential plan B? It's possible the committee says, let's dig into our reserves to fund the difference. And you heard that discussion today. So what we've done as a group is provide options for discussion when time comes to award. We haven't made decisions, and we're not saying we're cutting the budget. We're working within our budget, making sure that we have options, because if we have one bid and it's over, you're dead in the water if you don't have ways to manage it. So you could spin it a different way, but that's what some people may want to do. But the building committee is committed to working through all our, I think that word legal, right? We can't spend more than we have. So we have to work within our budget. And our budget, as everyone knows, is the 2.6, and we're working towards a maximum photovoltaic system of 1.3 megawatts. That's what we designed. That's what's out in the streets.
Thank you for clarifying that. So basically you're saying you are committed, the committee's committed to the $2.6 million. This splicing into the three pieces is just in case the bids, the total bids are over that 2.6, then we can cut something. But if everything's under 2.6, that 2.6 is sacrosanct and will be applied to PV.
That's what we have put in place, and that's what we still have planned to do. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. One second quick point is I've really enjoyed your couple of, I guess it's 3 videos so far explaining various aspects of the project. I believe there's one more, and forgive me if you've already released it, that you had promised, which had to do with explaining the whole PCO, PCCO change order process and cost process to us, because I think that would be very valuable for the community to know. I know you and Diane said you were working on that. Is that out yet? And if not, when can we expect to see that?
Diane, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, Bill.
She's been the charge behind this. Diane, I think we've actually filmed, it's coming a blur right now, but I think we filmed 4 and we have 2 pending. So can't even remember what the 4th one was, to be honest with you. Why don't you give us an update?
Sure. So we are working on the one that you mentioned, Brian, and we had a date scheduled for filming, and then we had some schedule conflicts come up on our team. So we have rescheduled that one. I think it's currently scheduled for October 24th to film, and then it usually takes BMC about a week or so to turn those around. So that should be coming out soon. And then we also are working on a video on Tuesday, the 18th, focus on the geothermal.
So Tuesday, the 18th, geothermal, yes. And was the last one we filmed having to do with just getting ready for school, I think, right? Superintendent Phelan and the transition. I think that's the one we did in
yes,
late August.
That was the 4th one.
Yeah, I would think that's out by now. I thought I saw it. So one other thing that Brian, that Diane and I worked on, which is a cost change, a construction cost change sort of flow chart or diagram. And we're working to get that up very soon, could be this week, on the committee website as a reference again. So hopefully that also helps explaining some acronyms, and I talked about that, and also sort of the way the process flows. So if you can't catch it in a 5 or 10 minute video clip and it's confusing, hopefully following through on the written document helps things out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for being responsive to this. And we all look forward to watching some quality TV that's upcoming.
That's a stretch, but thank you. I can't thank Diane enough for helping out. This has been really something that she's been pursuing, and it's gotten a little easier in getting the solutions out. I thank the committee members who've joined and done this, and I'm going to tap into a few others as we continue to partner. I think the next one in the near future might be you, Emma. You're still here. We'll talk about the auditorium. Joel is helping out on geothermal. Chris Mester's not here, but I'd like to grab him and talk about the field house through wrapping that up. These are good little nuggets of the total project, just like Brian's talking about too. cost control or managing construction cost changes. So all these little pieces tell the full story. So it's been fun. Any other comments from the public? I don't see any. No hands raised. Committee members, no hands raised. I'm through an agenda. Bob, I got to tell you,
Then I moved to end the meeting.
Yeah, and we'll end the meeting. Do I have a second?
Bowen, second.
Thank you, Kate. Folks, the meeting's ended. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Yeah.